And finally, we're talking about seed money in the budget. We're not touching upon a list of bills that I have here to the right that a number of us have sponsored and co-sponsored for tax incentives to invest at that early stage for tech transfer startups, or QETCs, qualified emerging technology companies. All of this, whether it's on the budget side or it's on the legislation side, can't be done with one house. And I'm just elated that a sponsor of many of these bills and a fighter in his house is with us today, Senator Stokowski.
Thanks, man. As Chairman of Economic Development, Small Business, and Commerce in the Senate, all of these issues are parts that we deal with in the budget. And the governor withdrawing the $25 million seed fund is very disappointing. As Assemblywoman Lepardo said, the Valley of Death is very well known among the people that are in the companies that are emerging from the universities, and particularly those that deal with the cats. And they start out, and then they need that help so that they can survive, and that missing link is referred to by all of them as the Valley of Death. And we think that it's a terrible shame that the governor, showing a realization of that in his original budget presentation, would pull that back now. Last year, we had to get a couple of the cats refunded that were very successful, and the fact is those cats probably would have survived, but they wouldn't have had a New York bent then. That means they wouldn't be able to help small businesses for free, and they wouldn't try to get businesses that they help to locate in New York. So we got that money in, working together, both houses, and got the governor to go along with it. I think we can hopefully accomplish the same thing in much the same kind of economic condition to get this seed money back in, because it plays an important role. It's very important. I can tell you about, in my experience on the cat, it's a little different story. Dr. Nowak, who worked on the genome encyclopedia, wanted to start a company. And she was with the people from the Buffalo Cat and said without their help, and their business component in particular, she would have taken any money she would have received and spent it like a scientist, meaning her business would not have been successful. So her company now is doing well, and as a matter of fact, from the 3 research centers in Buffalo, some companies were existing, but we now have 120 life science biotech companies in Buffalo and the surrounding area. And a lot of those companies are the ones that will be looking for money from a thing like this seed fund. So we think that the governor should be reconsidering that, and I'm sure that both houses will be pushing our leadership to make sure that that's one of the prime things we try to get back, because in the overall picture, it's a very small amount of money, and we should make sure it stays there. All the legislation to try to move forward on this private industry and university innovation combination is very important. And we should try to make sure that we can get as many of those bills through this year, because, for example, there's a CATS bill that we're having on our agenda today that makes changes in the way they're allowed to operate, that takes care of the problems that they're currently having in dealing with private industry to move forward and get these things out more successfully. So I'm glad to be joining my colleagues here today to talk about the importance of this issue and to offer our continued support and cooperation to make sure all these pieces of legislation, this issue moves forward, and the piece in the budget tries to get successfully put back in. Thank you.
So to wrap up, in summary, we talked about cats, we've talked about Valley of Death, we've talked about seed funding. At the end, this is jobs. This is what this comes down to. This is jobs for New York State. This is where we create jobs. We're not going to race to the bottom and ever be much cheaper than South Carolina in terms of trying to attract jobs. But the difference is we have certain assets that other states cannot match. And it's the investments we've made in our people through education, is the investments we made in our higher education institutions and our research. We are, again, the intellectual property capital of the world and the patent capital of the world. We create more ideas and products in our labs and in our institutions. And we're the financial capital of the world. And we need to marry those two things together with incentives, whether they be tax incentives, whether they be seed funding at the early stage. These early stage investments, these are shops that are maybe 3 to 5 people with an idea, with a product, and they need to be fostered and incubated in our incubators, given some help in their business planning, some initial startup funding, and they'll flourish in this state. It's happened in other states, but this state is more ripe than any other state in the nation to really harness this. And all of us are very passionate about that. So, the message we want to send to the governor is please don't stop this before it starts. This is the future of New York State. Thank you.
Do you have any questions, young lady?
Yeah.
Oh, let's open for questions.
I came in late, so you might have covered this, but the governor's proposing to cut funding to entrepreneurial programming.
Well, what we discussed here today, and in the governor's amendments, he has, a number of cuts in terms of economic development that we're concerned with. But what we focused on here today was the $25 million in seed funding that he had in his original budget. As we were doing hearings and putting together the Assembly budget and the Senate budget and our policies on technology transfer, the governor had his own task force on technology transfer and the innovation economy. And that task force came out and said that we needed tax incentives and we needed seed funding to create jobs in New York State. So he put $25 million into his budget. Unfortunately, because of this crisis, this is one of the areas he's looking to cut, and we're just trying to implore him that that's the wrong way to go. You can't stop investing in New York's future and in economic development, like was said by my colleagues, at this point. When times get tough, this is where you need to invest in the areas that are going to grow our economy, and tech transfer is heads above almost any other sector where we can have an enormous amount of growth.
And you're bringing forth legislation.
Well, we have, in the budget process, we have put money into the budget for this seed funding, but we also have a list of bills, once the seed funding is in place, to augment it, to create tax incentives for every job that's created, for example. Assemblyman Morelli has a bill that a number of us have co-sponsored, and I could let him speak to it, but it basically gives a tax credit for every job created. And the credit gets even larger if the person that's hired is from a targeted population of somebody that was on unemployment, for example, that can be retrained for one of these high technology jobs.
And the package is being brought forward today.
The package has been introduced. Our focus today is the $25 million in seed funding. Once we are sure that that's going to get into the budget, then we're going to work on making sure that these bills get passed this session.